I was growing up.
Yeah. We usually learn German in school, so I know some, but it would be hard to both speak German and English so at the same time.
There's me. There's you. We're up and going. Okay, so I met you for the first time. I didn't meet you, but I saw you. And I liked you from the very start. You know why?
No, why?
Can you guess why I liked you? Because
I started by defining my terms, at least somewhat, the atheism and such. Yeah.
well, no, that's not why I liked you. But that was good.
Okay.
But
Okay.
why I liked you was because you kind of defended me against Jonathan McClatchy. Remember that?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I think that's I think whenever someone speaks out against their own group, it lends a lot of credibility. So I trash talk atheists all the time.
That's good. To me, it's important that criticism is actually good criticism. So that also means that I have to criticize some Christians much of my time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So before you came on, I pulled your file, and I want to thank you for agreeing to talk with me without your lawyer present. But I actually do have a file here on you, and I want to see how close.
Okay.
So, in interest of time, I'm going to read out your file, and you tell me if anything's incorrect. And
Okay.
and I'm, depending how you answer later on, I'm willing to dismiss all the charges against you. But
Okay.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So you were born and raised in a non-believing family
Yeah.
and atheistic family?
Yeah, but we weren't very vocal about it or anything.
Okay.
So non-religious is probably more accurate.
Let's see here. And you and a friend at the age of, what was it, 18, started talking about first cause, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you thought, oh, man, it's either the universe has always existed or a God of some sort always existed. You started playing with those ideas and you came to the conclusion, it's more probable that a God started the whole thing. You said that you thought the multiverse was more speculative than a God.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll become important later on in the story.
I guess so.
And then so you were kind of a deist for several years, 18 to maybe 25. You didn't come out and say this, but I'm piecing the facts together here. So from 18 to 25, you were a deist, but then at age 25, you started researching Christianity.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Okay. And according to my math, according to the file on you, you're about 29 now? Are you 29? Yeah. Okay.
Just turned 29, yeah.
Okay, so at age 25, you started researching Christianity. I think the process took a few months, and then by the end of those few months, you accepted Jesus into your heart.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a huge interest in apologetics now.
Yeah.
During that from ages 25 to 29, you feel the presence of God. You're very confident about your belief in God, but you're not 100%.
Yeah.
You like reading things that go against your belief, like Richard Carrier, for example.
Yeah.
So this is the file I have here on you, and if that sounds pretty close, I have a few questions.
Yeah. questions are good. Yeah.
First of all, are you married?
No.
Do you have a girlfriend?
Yes.
How long have you been with your girlfriend?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Can you move your camera a little bit up, or is it that's impossible at this point? Because we're only seeing like. There you go. I want to definitely be able to. Yeah.
Is that better or?
No, you moved it and then went back to where it started. It's fine. It's fine. As long as we can see your eyes and into your soul, we'll be good.
Who said I had a soul?
Yeah, there you go. When you left, I mean, when you became a Christian, were your parents disappointed in you?
No. My mom was a Christian until she was about 18, 20 years. And she had a pretty bad relationship with Christianity.
Okay.
And my father was also brought up in a non-religious family, so he didn't think it mattered much at all.
Okay. Now, if you left Christianity a few years from now, would your Christian friends be upset?
I would guess so. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because they think it's true and it will determine my future. Yeah.
So when you say it'll determine your future, do your friends think? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because all my family is Christian, except for I have a cousin that's an atheist. So if you left Christianity, do you think your friends would be right that your future would change, and would it change for the negative?
Well, if I became an atheist tomorrow, I would have a pretty good story to tell. It could sell very well, so it would definitely affect my future. Probably in such a perspective, not that bad of a way.
Okay, but if you left Christianity, you're not foreseeing yourself as behaving any differently towards your fellow man.
That's a question I ask myself often, because I actually think it would. Probably not as much with my friends and family, but probably more with people I don't know.
How so?
I think. Because when I was an atheist, I were very clear that I thought every human had equal value and such things, but I'm not sure I could hold those beliefs consistently if I became an atheist now. And if so, it would probably affect my way of dealing with random people. Probably not my friends, because my friends would still be valuable to me, but not as much people I didn't care as much of, I think.
Before you became a Christian, you didn't feel that way, though, correct?
No, not at all. No.
That's interesting. So it sounds like to me that because you're a Christian now, and if you were to ever to leave, you would treat people worse than if you would never have become a Christian at all.
Well, I would still have a conscience, so I would still emotionally probably do much of the same, but intellectually, I don't think it makes sense or is consistent, unless someone can convince me that it actually is.
Okay. I think what you're I know what you're saying. You're basically talking about that you wouldn't have a basis for morality like you do in Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to figure out what is the most prominent reason why you believe. And so I tried this the other day with a guy, my last interview, and it worked well. And I think you're the type of guy who might be willing to try this. But if I'm going to suck all the reasons why you believe out of you right now, okay? And we're going to put those reasons on a shelf, okay? And we're going to we're going to analyze them. And so right now you have no reasons to believe in God. So if I was to ask you, do you believe in God? You would say
No.
no, because all your reasons to believe are now gone.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to stick various reasons back into you one at a time and then pull them back out. And you tell me how much your confidence goes from 0. You have no confidence that God is real, exists, all that stuff. I'm going to pop a reason back into you. You tell me how much it rises. And if and we'll say 0 to 100. And if it rises to, let's say if it rises over 50, that's enough to push the switch of belief on.
Yeah.
Okay, so fear of hell. That's a reason to, some people believe. I'm going to put that into you, fear of hell. How much does you go from 0 to what?
I don't think it would affect anything.
Okay, you'd stay at 0?
Yeah.
Okay. So then,
I think so. Yeah.
so basically, like Pascal's
Because
wager.
I wouldn't believe it even existed. So why would it matter?
Okay, got it. I guess it's sort of like Pascal's wagers. Like even me, like I could be wrong as an atheist that maybe there is a hell and I'm going there. So, how about first cause? Explanation why there's something other than nothing.
Yeah. That's one of my major ones. So that alone will boost it up to 90-95.
Oh,
something
wow.
about
Okay.
there. Yeah, I think.
How about a basis for morality?
I think now it's a coherent argument, but not convincing. So what it does is it makes you choose between either morality or either not morality or God and morality. So in and of itself, it's not that convincing, unless I want to do justice to my feeling of morality, which I do think carries some weight. So probably 30-40%.
Okay. And since you're a Christian, let's say the historical evidence for Jesus. Okay. Right now you don't believe in God, but now we're putting all that into you. How much would you jump?
Since I don't believe in a God, I'm not sure it would do very much.
Okay.
I do know many apologists says that it could be a one argument, but I don't think I agree. I think you need some God to begin with.
Okay. I think I've put enough beliefs in there to figure it. Okay. So it's, let's start at deism and not specific Christianity then. And let's talk about first cause. So when you were 18 and you were talking to your friend about first cause and trying to figure out, the big questions of life, why there's something other than nothing. How did you arrive at the conclusion that there has to be a God to start everything?
So when we talked, first of all, he wasn't an apologist, so he didn't make an argument.
Right.
He had heard of it, and then we talked about it in general, like what does Big Bang mean, and what is the theory, and stuff like that. So when we had been talking for about 5-6 hours, we were kind of in agreement that either this probably is a good pointer again towards a creator, or we simply hadn't understood the implications well enough, the science or the implications. Yeah.
And how did you reject the idea that maybe you didn't understand the science?
I spent about 3 months researching cosmology on an amateur level. So I read a magazine called Science Illustrated. I think it's a worldwide one. In Norwegian, so they had a special issue about the beginning of the beginning of the universe, and they suggested multiverse and cyclical universes and several other theories, and of course not God. And in common with all the resources I read at that time was that no one mentioned God as even a probable alternative, or even a possible one. So I think at the very least, when I read the literature, it was thoroughly scientific and secular, but I think that I didn't see the evidence for theories like cyclical or multiverse or any other kind of universe beginning. And even with them, there might be still several problems that would have to be explained.
Okay, so
which I do.
Can I stop you there? So what you're saying is you didn't see any evidence for, let's say, multiverse theory or stuff like that, but you still came to the conclusion that it's more probable that a god did it. What evidence did you see that made you go to that conclusion?
So to me, when I decided that, well, yes, the evidence points against God, I would start by defining what I even meant then, because what I meant wasn't primarily that this kind of God is the creator. What I was, my understanding was that some kind of explanation needs to be there, and no physical explanation seems to do what it needs to do. So then something non-physical is the kind of explanation. I don't need to understand entirely how, but it seems more reasonable that this kind of non-physical entity would be the cause.
Can you help me understand why you thought something non-physical is more reasonable than physical?
So I could not find any inherent property in the physical which could possibly explain either the eternal existence or the beginning of physical matter. And if that's true, then the most likely is something else.
Okay, and that's and that's something else. Why did you choose So is God just a placeholder for that something else?
Well, in a way, you could say, why call it God? But the reason I accepted that this something else is the same kind of thing that Christians refer to when they talk about the creator of the universe. So a shortcut, instead of describing everything it must have, is simply to call it God. But that also made me have to explain how it is not the Christian God, for instance. So often,
I guess my question would be, why isn't I don't know a good answer, and just leave it at that?
well, it is. But I don't think it's the I think I have enough information to do an educated guess.
So your belief in God's an educated guess?
I would say today it's a stronger educated guess than it was back then. Yeah.
Okay. How do you define universe?
Everything which exists.
Does that include God or not?
Well, it would not include God. Yeah.
It wouldn't? I didn't
Well,
hear you.
if it did, it would be circular. So yeah, universe would be everything which exists except God. And one could, of course, just say that that's a cop out and letting God off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that you need some kind of explanation for this which exists. And for there to be some such explanation, I think it must be outside or inherent in and of itself. And if it is not inherent in the physical world we live in, then it seems to be something else.
And when you use the word beginning, like the universe had a beginning,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? What do you think that means?
So I primarily hold to some Big Bang understanding of the universe, but it could be a multiverse, or if a multiverse did exist, that would be what I was referring to with the universe.
Okay, so the way I've understood it is the Big Bang is the beginning of the expansion of our reality. And some people call that our universe with a small u.
Yeah.
And before the Big Bang, we have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
In fact, even that phrase I just said is nonsensical, because how do you time began and the laws of physics started after the Big Bang. So to say what happened before is a time dependent statement. It's nonsensical. But I guess so let's say there was a universe or universes, and a universe, like this is one theory, a universe collapsed or shrunk, contracted, however you want to say it, went to a singularity and then exploded again in the Big Bang. And let's say you have that, like imagine a necklace of pearls.
Yeah.
So you have like,
and
it goes, just goes around and around. There's no beginning, no end, but they each cause each other. I guess now nobody knows if that's true. That's complete conjecture, right? But I guess my question would be, how did you exclude that possibility for the God hypothesis?
Well, if someone could show evidence of that, or even some kind of physics which would be consistent with that, we would have we could be able to discuss such an alternative. Meanwhile, all our physics that we actually do know seems to suggest that this seems to be impossible. At the very least, not very likely.
But you think forgive me, but I'm just in my brain right now. I'm screaming special pleading because
Yeah.
how if you apply what you just said to your God. Now again, we're talking about deism here, not specific theism. What I'm hearing you say is that it just kind of made more sense to you that there's a God, but is that evidence what makes sense to you, or
Yeah. So, I do think that intuition should be considered. I do not think it's the best way to make an argument, but I do think that all these models we have for the beginning of the universe, or an eternal universe, or beginning but not this kind of universe, like the multiverse, we still do physics to make that coherent. And if I take physics seriously, it seems to point that physics can't solve this. Not just because I don't know, but also because they actually seem to point that way. And to me, there's nothing inherently unlikely about God. When I started this discussion with my friend, we started with the point that let's say it's 50% likely God do exist and 50% non-likely, meaning we have no conception of this to begin with. And for every such model we look at for the physical universe, that probability seems to go down and down, and closing into zero-ish, which means that God is what is left, since God is something non-physical. Does it make sense? Or is it just special pleading?
Well, do you think it's special pleading?
No, not at all. But I do understand, because I let God somewhat out. I do think I hold them to the same standards. But the problem is we don't have much conception about how God could or would be. So it gets a whole lot of more room to wiggle in. While the physical, we know lots of how it works. So when we find pointers on the physical that points to there being a beginning of the physical, and something needs to be eternal, something needs to always have existed, no matter what that means, or how we are able to understand that. But if something has to be eternal, and the physical seems to be inherently not such a thing which could do that, then the probability of God or that non-physical
You said something very interesting. You said with the God hypothesis, there's more wiggle room, I think you said.
Yeah.
Now, to my ears, that makes it sound like it's easier to make things up. It's easier to just imagine and kind of fit things together to suit our needs. Like as truth seekers, we want to try to narrow the wiggle room.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I guess.
So,
Go ahead.
could I ask you, what do you think when I say, for instance, let's take the first look and say that God and non-God is equally probable solutions as something which did always exist? Does that seem biased?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, why?
Because we have no basis to say that they're equal. Like, I look at the universe. Now, my sense is we could live in a matrix, but we have to have a presupposition at some point. So I presuppose that the universe is real, and so so we can learn things from it. But if I'm going to believe something, my personal epistemology is that I need a reason. Now, I agree that, let's say, the multiverse is speculative. But on the same hand, I would say that the God hypothesis is speculative. Would you agree with that?
I would say by default, yes.
Okay. So I guess, why have you chosen to live your life like this speculation is true, rather than be agnostic and say, maybe it's true, maybe we just need to wait? People used to think that lightning was from the gods. And have we not just changed lightning into first cause now and said we can't explain it, therefore God?
Well, I think that's the God of the gaps kind of thinking. And I do think that it's very important that we don't do such evaluations. And I hope I'm not doing that. I would like to be shown how I do that, but I don't think I do, because let's leave the entire God concept. Let's start with physical and non-physical. Would that make you easier able to accept the non-physical as an explanation, or do you think it's inherent that non-physical can't be an explanation?
Again, like if I value truth, I would need to have a reason to believe in the non-physical. Like we contest physical. I don't even know what non-physical means or is. Like, how do we explain it? I know people think, thoughts, are they physical? But, they're a function of the physical. But, again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that you're wrong and that there is no God. All I'm saying is, from my point of view, if I'm going to be a person who humbly looks at evidence, I'm going to try as hard as I can not to choose a conclusion that makes me feel good, or choose a conclusion that gives me comfort, or even just choose a conclusion that makes sense to me. Because what makes sense to people, I think history has taught us, leads you down the wrong path in many, many ways, in many, many times. Can I play a clip for you? I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it, but this is, I don't know if you've seen this. Do you see the picture there? Does that look familiar?
I can only see the intro guy.
Okay, so I'm going to play this clip. This is Sean Carroll. He's a theoretical physicist.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to talk about first cause. And if you can hear it, put your thumb up. If you can't, put your thumb down. And I'm going to press play. Okay. I'm just going to have to do this old school and just run it through this speaker, so the quality won't be that good. But here we go. Hang on a second.
Cosmologists say that the theory of inflation, which began our understanding of the current universe at least, requires there to be a beginning.
Yeah, they're wrong. I think that, for one thing, there are theorems about what space-time can do. And when you take space-time into the past, and number one, you make some assumptions. And number two, under those assumptions, you say the classical space-time comes to a singularity. But those assumptions might be wrong. That's always a possibility. And classical space-time is not the fundamental answer. We know the world is not classical. We know there is quantum mechanics. No one has a quantum theory of gravity for which there is a theorem that says the universe had to begin. In fact, it is trivial to prove the opposite theorem. If you have a time-dependent quantum state, it is obviously extendable infinitely far into the past.
So, your position, to be clear, is that there's a quantum mechanical state that is the universe and the laws of physics as a singular package.
That's right.
And so, does that mean that, from our perspective at least, that the universe is infinite in both directions?
That's right.
Past as well as future?
Yes.
So did you hear that?
Yeah, was it from Closer to Truth?
This is from, yes, Closer to. So have you seen it before?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are your thoughts when you hear that? So I think Sean Carroll, this type of opinion is not shared by all physicists by any means, but it's not a hugely minority view. It's I don't even want to put a percentage on it, but a large percentage of physicists think, the universe is infinite in both directions, and it has no. And so when we say Big Bang, it's the beginning of the expansion of our universe, and that's all we know. And there's nothing to say that we can't go infinitely back or infinitely forward. So when you hear that, does that at all lower your confidence in the God hypothesis, that God is needed?
I would say no, but I don't want to say that that's not because I don't consider it. I do think that we have two kinds of evidence or pointers to there not being an eternal universe. The first is scientific. The second is philosophical. So I don't think Sean Carroll has in any way, type, or form even tried to engage with the philosophical kind of evidence. But I do think that because they were talking about the Carroll Chan model, weren't they?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, if Sean Carroll is right about what he's saying, would your confidence decrease in God?
Well, yeah. If he was right, it would decrease at least somewhat. But I do think that some cosmological beginning, as I said
well, shouldn't your
about
confidence?
ethics academy.
But if Sean Carroll's right, I just asked you if Sean Carroll's right, would that decrease your confidence? And you said somewhat, but wouldn't it decrease 90 to 95%, like you said earlier? Remember, we placed that reason into you, and you said, yeah, that's 90 to 95%. Yeah. So I would think if Sean Carroll's right, you would maybe believe in God 10% with confidence, at best.
So the problem is really it's a that's one of my current struggles, because if we don't have a beginning, I still think we need a necessary explanation, which means that I would win either way, which is very problematic.
Why do you think we need an explanation for, it'd be nice to have one, I agree, but why do you think you need one?
Because let's take the either Carroll Chan book Two Ways or the spiral you talked about, the circle.
Yeah.
So both of them still need an explanation for why they exist at all. It might be deluded just because of our pattern-seeking brains and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think it is something. I don't think it's irrational, at the very least, to want an explanation.
Yeah, I agree. It's not irrational, like, to have that desire to want explanations for things. But again, I always go back to this concept called truth, and not to not to jump to conclusions. So if this is why I call myself an agnostic atheist, because I'm totally open to the God concept, but I'm not going to believe because I need an explanation for first cause. I'm totally okay with saying, with the uncertainty. And again, maybe in the future we'll know more through science.
Could I challenge that at least somewhat?
Sure, yeah.
Aren't you then just saying, well, you might give me pointers, but I still believe that science might explain this some other way sometime in the future? Aren't you basically doing a science of the gaps?
Science of the gaps. Well, in order to have a gap, there has to be an unknown, and I'm just saying, I'm just waiting. That's all.
Yeah,
and I'm waiting for maybe your God as well. Like, if your God is true and he can interact with the natural world, we haven't talked about that yet. But I guess I don't see like, science is observation. So, and a gap is a gap. It's nothing. So how can you observe nothing? Science of the gaps doesn't really make sense to me. But maybe I am.
I would define science of the gaps like saying, well, I don't know, but I do trust that science will be able to answer this by definition.
No, I'm not saying that either. We might not ever know.
Okay, and that might also.
And I'm okay with that.
I'm too, principally. There's nothing in me which says, well, we must understand this. But I do think that when I'm as honest as I can be with myself, seeking truth, not seeking God, the probability seems to me to go in the favor of some sort of creator, and to me that's not either a problem or something good. First years I believed in God, it made no difference. It impacted me in no kind of way. It was just another fact in my baggage.
Right.
The same way I also have a grandmother.
But it was the belief in God that was the stepping stone for Christianity, though, which we can talk about a little later. I want to get back to something you said that I think you said, I need an explanation for first cause, or why we're here. Do you apply that to God? Like, why is there a God? Do you need an explanation why God exists?
So I've just said, I really don't have a principle which says I need to understand this. But I do think that something needs to be eternal, or needs to be always have existed in some way. And if it's something and the physical seems non-probable, then the non-physical is probable. So it's not. So I don't need to understand how either is eternal, because something needs to be, or something has come from absolutely nothing. And if that's the case, you can't even use reason at least on that problem. And I do think that that's a very just toss in the air and rejecting all logic, which I think is a really bad idea.
Before you said, like, it was a I think you said it was like a 50-50. There's 50% chance that there's nothing but physical, 50% chance that there's physical and maybe non-physical. But earlier you told me that that 95% of your confidence comes from first cause.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a mismatch there. If it's a 50-50 thing for you, why is there so much weight on the God hypothesis?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to start with 50-50.
Okay.
And then work your way from there.
I see. Okay. So you're saying that maybe you started at 50-50, but now you're at 95.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A friend of Billy and a friend of my friend Billy and I, we a while back came up with 7 possible explanations for the universe. And I often say this to theists. I haven't done it in a while, but when someone says to me that first cause is a huge one, like why is there something rather than nothing, I'll pull out these 7, and then I'll ask them, well, why did you choose one over the other 6? And so I'll just quickly run down them. Like some say the universe has always existed, but then they say, well, there's an infinite regress problem. But other people say, no, we can solve that problem. So that's option 1. The universe always existed. Some say that the universe did come from nothing. And the reason why we don't see things popping into existence is because we don't have examples of nothing. But if there was nothing, maybe things can come from nothing. But we've never observed nothing, so we don't, it's really weird to think of it, and our minds probably can't even understand it, but that's an option. Option 3 is some say the universe came from an impersonal God, like a prime mover, and that's sort of what we're talking about right now. But you're a theist, so you took it a step up. Some say the universe came from a personal God, and that's what you currently believe. Some say that. Well, here's a good one. Why couldn't the universe have been created by many gods, each with a certain sector of the universe that they were responsible for? Like if it can be one, why couldn't it be 2? And maybe they're not all powerful or all knowing. Maybe they have weaknesses, and that's why there needs to be more than one. So that's option 5. Here's option 6. Some say that there's an infinite universe that's created all the time. So string theory. Option 7 is that maybe the universe came from something other than a god, something we're not even aware of, but but that it is physical in nature, but in another realm.
Yeah.
But I guess that's similar to multiverse theory. I don't know, but So here's 7 options, and how did you choose the personal God over the other 6?
So I also have a list of 12.
Oh, you got 12?
But what I do then is I also put in the relation. So relation in time, which makes it a lot more. And I also add the pantheism, which I don't think is represented here.
Okay.
But what I would do with these 7, I think they could easily be reduced to these 2 or 3 I use.
Okay.
So universe exists forever is physical. Universe from nothing is nothing. Mm-hmm. Impersonal God, personal God would both be non-physical. Many gods would be non-physical or physical, depending on how those gods are actually described. String theory would still be physical, mm-hmm. And something other than God, physical in nature, would be physical. So I don't. For me, it seems that it's basically personal or impersonal God, which is the distinction which would be relevant to my conclusions after my after I've said that the physical seems non-probable. which is a real struggle I did go through.
Yeah.
I first thought impersonal, then personal.
Yeah, I don't understand how you came to that conclusion,
Yeah.
because
So
it's more like is it an intuition? Is it
it is.
a gut feeling, or
So it is intuition, but I also think it's when you boil it down to well, if it must be one thing, it's probably intuition. But I do think it's reasoned intuition, and the reason why I say that is when I look at cosmology, it seems to suggest that at the very least, the universe we know has a beginning. That in and of itself is a pointer to there actually being a beginning. And you may suggest other alternatives like the multiverse and so on, but we don't have any reasonable alternative to say that other than, well, it's a problem that the universe began, because it points to either it came from nothing, which makes no sense, and God, or something non-physical, which is not an answer we do want, because it's not a physics answer. So I don't want to just throw it away based on like they don't want God in physics or something, but I do think that there is something to it, because physics don't deal with that kind of explanation, so it's not even available. But I do think that it's an actual alternative.
yeah, I agree it's an alternative.
Yeah,
But I don't see it having any more weight than any other option that we don't have evidence for. So we have a bunch of options, none of which have evidence, and so we're left with picking one that almost just suits what makes sense to us, which I don't think is a good way to arrive at truth. Would you agree with that?
I do think I understand where you're coming from. So in part I agree, but I do disagree in the factuality of it. Do you see the argument that if Big Bang actually is what science says, it does make God, at least in principle, more likely than if we didn't have Big Bang?
No, I don't see that at all, because Big Bang is just the beginning of the expansion of our reality. That's it.
Yeah, but it does point to a beginning. So it doesn't need to be a beginning.
Yeah, it's the beginning of the expansion. It's the beginning of the expansion.
Yeah, but what is your alternative? It's been non-expanding for eternity and suddenly expanded.
I don't know,
because that's suddenly need a reason too.
I don't think it'd be nice to have a reason, but it's not one that I have a problem with the word need. I don't like to be needy. I'm curious. I would love to know, but if I'm not going to grasp onto an explanation just because I need one.
Okay, so I think it's hard to cut oneself off this kind of reasoning. So to give you what I'm trying to reason here, for instance, evil. I must admit that evil, in principle, is a pointer against a good God. It could be that there is some kind of explanation, but in and of itself, it's definitely, undoubtedly, a pointer toward away from a good God. Principally, the same way, if a universe has a beginning, or what we know seems to point to a beginning, that makes some other explanation more likely, because what we know points to a beginning. It doesn't need to be a beginning. There could be some other explanation, but at least in principle, it does differentiate, or does make some other explanation more likely. Just in principle, it doesn't need to mean that God is real, or anything, or even something non-physical is real. But it do make it more likely, just in principle.
I'm sorry.
Is that?
No, I'm sorry, Leif. I don't understand how the beginning of the expansion of our reality makes the God hypothesis more likely. I'm sorry, I just don't get that.
So could you explain? Is that because you see all the other alternatives as equally likely? Then you have said that multiverse seems to be a stretch.
I think since we don't know, we don't have data, it's all speculative. And that's why I brought that word up earlier. Since we have all these options, I'm okay with just saying, I don't know.
So it's also speculative to say that you exist. You have already said this, that we need to take something on and some sort of axiom, well, reality exists and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But it's still speculative. I could say I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not reasonable to do that, even though it's a possibility. Would you agree? Or
yeah, I would
not
agree. No, I would agree that it sure feels like I exist in this world that we're in, and it feels like I'm having these experiences.
Yeah.
But whether there's a matrix out there, you can't falsify that, right? It's just, but I live my life like it is true, and so that's why I call it a presupposition. Now, am I understanding you to say that you're presupposing that God exists?
No. I know some Christians do that, but I would definitely not do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's evidence-based, but not 100%. I do think it's overwhelmingly likely, but I do want to go back to like you just appealed to intuition.
Yep.
For this world being real.
Right, and I could be wrong.
But would you say it's also recent intuition, or it's simply intuition and we can't know? We don't. Yeah, it's simply intuition.
No, I don't think it's simply intuition. That we're not in the matrix. Yeah, that's a presupposition. I don't even call it intuition. It's a properly basic belief that seems like most of the planet shares. There's a few weirdos out there that believe we live in the matrix, but it seems like the planet, the Homo sapiens, share that presupposition that the universe is real and exists, and we can learn things about it. But I was going to ask you, this is a really weird thought experiment, and I don't even know if it will make sense. But see if you and I could pull ourselves out of the universe with a capital U, and we're outside and we're hypothesizing, okay, what would a universe look like if there's a God, and what would a universe look like? What would we expect a universe to look like if there wasn't one?
I got a call. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, if we were to hypothesize together what a universe would look like if there's a God versus what a universe would look like if there wasn't one. Do you think we could come up with a list of what we would expect to see? Or is that...
Well, I think that's clear. And that's also some of the reason why I don't like the teleological arguments, because I do think that they cut all ways for both the atheists and theists alike. And
Wow. Thank you for that. You're the first Christian I've heard say that. Seriously. Because I agree with you. Because, the design arguments are, well, just look around, Doug. The universe looks designed. Oh, really? What does an undesigned universe look like?
I'm having a problem with this sound, so I'm trying to fix it.
Okay, I'll wait for you. I'm going to see if there's any good questions in the chat while you're doing that. I see a lot of comments, but not too many questions. Okay, hopefully it comes back. Oh man, we've been going an hour already? Wow. Okay. Oh, he's trying to get in. Here we go.
Could you speak again?
Yes. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go about 15 more minutes, and then I got to pick up the kids from school.
Okay.
Maybe we should let this go for now and go into theism for a little bit. Oh, I got to ask this. I at risk of offending you, but I've seen this so many times. I have to ask. When I brought your file out and I went through your history, the thought occurred to me. Your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Is she a Christian?
Yes.
When did she become a Christian? Before you or after you? Did you lead her into Christ or did she lead you into Christ?
Well, she was a Christian when we got together, but I think the first time she went to a church was after I became a Christian.
Okay, and did you and your girlfriend talk about this sort of thing?
Oh, she is. She might have been several times, but at the very least, it wasn't super important to begin with. But now I would say she's probably actively engaging in faith. Yeah.
And did you and your girlfriend talk about these issues a lot while you were, from 18 to 25?
No, not much.
Okay. So she would be like a nominal type Christian.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she did. She wasn't baptized until she was 15. So it was definitely a conscious choice. But it, I would still say, she was not. We were not engaging much in the discussions and such.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have a theory that I totally could be wrong about, but my theory is that for the majority of cases, people come into a God belief through either indoctrination or desperation. And usually what happens is the indoctrination part, people are born and raised in it, whether they're nominal or committed. Either way, they go through some type of crisis between the ages of 18 and 22. They start asking, do I just believe because my parents believe? They do the research, they do the soul searching, and wouldn't you know it, the core beliefs of their parents happen to be the right ones. And then for people who become Christians later in life, and were not raised in a culture or an environment that is Christian, what happens is it's usually an addiction, or a tragedy, death, divorce, bankruptcy, something like that, and that's what there's a need that's built, and so religion fulfills that need. Now, that doesn't sound like that was the case for you, maybe in either situation, but you did both kind of come from a nominal Christian background, and so I guess
I wouldn't say I came from a nominal.
well, you mentioned your mother was a Christian.
Until she was about 18, so I didn't even know about that until after I became a Christian.
Okay, I see. Okay. So let's talk, in the time we have remaining, let's talk about how you went from, okay, I think it's more probable than not that God exists. How did you go from that to saying Jesus rose from the dead, therefore I'm a Christian?
Well, it's a long argument, though.
Can you give me the Coles Notes? Because we got about 10, 15 minutes left. What was the main thing you can think of?
I would say, to dumb it down incredibly, I started by realizing that, first of all, the New Testament is a historical text in the way Bart Ehrman would see it. And when I read up on like Bart Ehrman and some Tim O'Neill and a lot on the internet and some books, and realized that at the very least, my view on the Bible from before that was basically unholdable. That it was just some fairy tale-ish kind of story. So at the very least, it's an historical text, which probably describes at least something that somewhat happened. And I also checked out people like Lee Strobel to get a basic sense of what Christians said about the Bible in somewhat more intellectual way. And I didn't really find those books enough, but they were interesting enough to keep on searching. Books I did find more convincing was like Jesus and the Eyewitnesses of Richard Bauckham. And
a lot of these names I've done critiques on my channel, so if you haven't seen them, I encourage you.
So I would say, for instance, Lee Strobel's book is a very good introduction just to get the gist of what they're claiming and such. But he often stops exactly where I need to push on to understand, like, why is this actually a good argument? And I think Richard Bauckham does a better job at showing this is an actual argument which you can trust in some way.
But how did you come to the conclusion that here's an idea.
Yeah.
If I told you that I found a book or some documents, and it talks about a man, and it talks about what this man did, where he went, the cities he visited, the job he had, the people he met. I think you and I would read that document and say, yeah, this is history. This, no reason to doubt this. But what if I told you now that as we kept reading, we find out that the name of this man is Clark Kent. And later on in the book, it talks about how this man circled the globe, five times a minute, and could walk through walls and all these things. Would you doubt the even mundane parts that we read just prior, or would you still accept them?
So I would still accept them. Yeah.
Interesting. See, I
When or that depends, of course. If it's in a fictitious setting.
but we don't know if it's in a fictitious setting.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I would say okay, that's a good reason to at least check out the mundane. But it seems to me that we have good reason, or when we do check out the Gospels, they do pan out, at least in the mundane details. It seems you disagree.
You're a psychic.
So
we
would
got
you even just
we got about 5 minutes left. How did you figure out, let's say, that maybe some of it's true and some of it isn't? Like, do you think all of it's true in the Gospels?
To me, currently, I do think that at the very least, most of it seems true. And I don't have a problem with saying that, well, maybe not everything. I do think there could be a historical wiggle room. But I do think it's trustworthy enough to actually think that the gist of what is there is properly true.
What would you have to see in order for your confidence to be lowered that it is trustworthy? Like, for example, let's say I told you that none of the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses. Zero, zip, nada, none of them. Would that lower your confidence?
Actually, not that much, but that's mainly because of the undefined coincidence argument, which Jonathan McClatchy mentioned. I do think that shows that the content is actually what is trustworthy, not necessarily who wrote it. I do think that you could make a very good case for the eyewitnesses, but I do think that the undefined coincidences is the major best argument for the reliability of the Gospels.
What if we found evidence that none of the people who claim to have seen the risen Jesus actually died a martyr's death? Would that lower your confidence?
I'm pretty skeptical about claims like all the disciples
I'm doing
died.
I'm doing an extreme example, but let's say we found a document unearthed that, the prominent names, they actually died for sedition or something like that.
So I usually don't use that argument at all. But I do think it carries some weight that at least they were willing. They seem to be willing to die for their beliefs, but I don't think it's I don't think it's the strongest of arguments. So it would, of course, I would reduce my belief somewhat, but not much, because it doesn't rely much on that.
So from what you're saying, it sounds to me like the strongest argument that you're talking about is that compilation. Yeah. I talked to Jonathan McClatchy about that briefly, and my theory is that when that if we were to take each claim in the Gospels one at a time, that they would fall flat individually. You and I, especially if we came from a veil of ignorance and we're seeing it for the first time, we would say, okay, here's a man claimed to be dead and was seen by people for 40 days. We would say, oh, that's just a claim. It probably didn't happen. There's a lot of claims on this planet. We don't believe all of them. And then, but the undesigned coincidence argument is that when you layer more and more on, it makes the previous one more likely. And my view is no, just if you look at them all individually, and if they're all bad reasons individually, just because you wrap them together doesn't mean you get one good reason. And
So, could you retell what? How would you explain the undefined coincidence argument?
it's exactly that. I've used the example that if you get a bunch of bankrupt companies and you conglomerate them into one, that doesn't guarantee you have a profitable company. And just because you have certain things over on this part of the Bible kind of explaining other things doesn't necessarily mean that you now have a good reason to believe. I really got to go in about 5 minutes. So my personal opinion is that that a big chunk of the Gospels could have been written by you, and most of it never ever happening. Meaning, if you were very knowledgeable about the Old Testament, if you knew the Old Testament inside and out, if you knew some of the Greek mythologies, if you knew some of the Greek novels at the time, if you were very familiar with the Hellenistic viewpoint, things like, the Dying and Rising Gods, some of Homer's works where Odysseus is a king and goes back to his homeland, and he tells, "Shh, don't tell anyone I'm back." Like, very similar to Mark. So I view the Gospels as a screenplay, Mark at least as a screenplay, and that Matthew, Luke borrowed the synoptic problem, which I'm sure you're aware of. And now again, like, if Jonathan's listening, he's pulling what he has left of his hair out and saying, "No, you're just so wrong, Doug." But the view I'm espousing right now is not like, in Christian fundamental circles, of course, they're going to say, "Doug, you're just stupid." But in secular and even Jewish historians' view, that's what I'm saying is pretty standard. That there is a synoptic problem. There's very few things that secular historians can say about Jesus. I think it's down to 5 or 6 things, and that's it. A lot of the claims have only one source. Like the 500 witnesses in 1 Corinthians, that's the only claim, And historians say, if we don't have 2 independent sources, we'd start to doubt these things. So anyhow, I would love to talk about this more, and I kind of just threw that out there at the end, and you probably really want to respond to it. So why don't you take like a couple of minutes and give us some last words, and you can lead us in an altar call at the end here.
Okay, so. I don't want to respond because that makes it uneven. So what I do want to do is I want to end on Chesterton. I just read Chesterton, who said that it's very hard to get even a reasonable man to defend society as a principle, because it's so many reasons why he actually think that to be a good way to live. And it's kind of the same way here. So I think that one of the reasons I hopefully am able to speak at least somewhat coherently on these matters are because I've put a lot of energy in trying to understand the objections, trying to understand the claims, and I've tried to be systematic about it for a very long time. So it doesn't make me any more or any less prone to still having all of reality points to God, because I do feel much like that. But I do think that, or even using feel skews the intellectual aspect of it. But I do think that for instance, when I read Richard Carrier, I think he has the best alternative. If Jesus were to be a myth, that would be the best solution to make it probable for Jesus just to be a myth. And in that way, I respect his work, but I also see that when he has written a 700-page or two giant books, he still haven't dealt with, for instance, the name statistic argument, which he does use the other way. So he cites Richard Bauckham. So he doesn't know the argument, but he does in no way deal with it in any way. And I think I'm rambling now. but
I lost you. You'll probably come back.
Trying to hear me then.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, but I do have to go.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do a take two, and we can talk.
Like that.
And we can talk about more about Jesus. One thing here, I have a favor to ask of you. I want you to think about this question. Don't answer now, but I want you to think why I need Jesus. Why Doug needs Jesus.
Yeah.
Think about it, and next time we talk, I want your opinion on why I need Jesus.
Okay, yeah.
And thank you to everyone in the chat. We had like 52 people watching right now, and sorry I didn't.
Okay.
Sorry, my Canadian accent. Sorry I didn't answer any questions, but I was peering and was watching some of the comments there, and I guess there's no way for people to get a hold of you directly if they want to, is there? You like to
Facebook,
Twitter? Do you have Twitter?
No.
No. Okay.
I should. No.
But I'll put. Do you want your full name in the description box when I put this on YouTube later?
No problem.
No problem with that. Okay. So I can link to your Facebook in the description so if anybody wants to contact you later. Okay. Thanks a lot, Leif, for coming on. I love your name, by the way. And
thank you.
And we'll do this again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.